everybody, and welcome. I'm Jennifer, host of Soul Wisdom Abundance, Create Wealth Through Spiritual Health. I'm thrilled, delighted, honored. I don't know. I need a new thesaurus, Heather. uh, each of you are here, and I'm going to invite you to settle in and listen to the conversation, because we've got quite a conversation to have today. And as usual, it's perfect timing. My guest and I, who I'll introduce in just a moment, are going to talk about what she calls being unshakable. And I've been sitting with that word over the weekend because the world has been rocking and rolling. The world has been shaking. I don't mean to make light of it. I live in Minneapolis. The riots, my daughter was close, safe. She's white. So she was safer than safe. And we could have a whole conversation about that, Heather. But we'll focus. Needless to say, I have been leaning a lot on my own personal tools. And I'm really hoping that over the course of this conversation that I'm going to come away with another tool or two, because, the world needs to be shaken. Sometimes you got to break things before they're fixable. And there's a lot of things that have needed attention for a long time. And so the breakdown is important, but we can't break ourselves, right? We need to be able to hold steady. And that is as true in this kind of climate as when you're looking at your finances. And so we're going to talk kind of the whole range in our conversation today. So before we get started, I need to introduce the guest. So let me introduce you to Dr. Heather Clark. She's a friend, she's a colleague, and I'm so glad you're here. Let me just tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Heather Clark is a powerful and soulful energy guide. She's a coach, she's a speaker, and she's been connecting people with their purpose and vitality through her work as a stress and burnout expert for over a decade. She's committed to leading individuals to their unshakable being so that they have peace and success. And this is personal, right? She had her own recovery from severe stress and burnout, and awakened to her purpose when she realized that the root cause of burnout isn't just stress. It's the fundamental stress of being someone you're not. She leads clients from around the world on their journey from stress to bliss. And I am delighted that you're here, Heather. Welcome.
Thank you. I am overjoyed to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, overjoyed. I'm going to add that one to my list. I love it. I knew you'd have a few. I knew you'd have a few. All right. So you know what? I'm curious, because I know you have a personal story with this. I'm curious about what sparked your interest. What was like the thing that sparked your interest in this idea of an unshakable being?
So it's really interesting. It's the type of thing I've been doing all along, but I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I'm one of these people where I'm wired like, who am I really? What's my big thing that I can offer in the world? And I came at it from a perspective of it's actually through gene keys, which is a way of accessing human design, which is like, that's a whole other conversation. But my greatest service in the world, they call it cosmic order. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is about being unshakable. And then everything opened up. I was like, that explains why I am all about solid foundations. What's functional? What works?
Yeah.
And how can I prevent from getting out of balance? Because all stress is just a challenge to normal balance. That's all it is. So everybody has stress. Everybody comes out of balance. It's not how can I be real fragile with staying in balance. It's about how can I return to balance quickly, immediately, and really get that that equilibrium back and the equanimity. And I was like, this is what it's all about. And it's just opened up for me.
Beautiful. So I like what you had to say about it's not about the fragility of like never ever having stress again, right? That's not what we're shooting for here. It's as you were saying that I had the image of I'm a nature girl, right? So I had the image of trees, right? You're blowing in the wind, and there are some trees that are more flexible than others. I think about willows, kind of whipping their branches around, or then there's my favorite, which is the oak tree, right? Really solid. But if you ever look at an oak tree's branches, they wave, right? So they there's movement in it. So it isn't about saying, nope, nothing's ever going to bother me again, but which, if you could promise that, you'd have it in a bottle and be a gazillionaire, I suppose. But that's not what life is about, right?
Yeah.
But it is about this ability to come back into center, right?
Yeah, definitely come back into center. And using your tree analogy, when trees are exposed to the winds and the weather, they get stronger. Flexible but strong. This is about balance and flow. It's when you're unshakable, you're fully present, but you're responding to life, not reacting to it. And every time you respond, you build resilience and it makes you stronger.
Yeah. So I guess we could use a muscle analogy too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. A muscle and there's all sorts of truly wonderful analogies that work for this. But the end result is no matter what happens, you are calm, you are powerful, you are confident. And that helps you really bring that energy into your life so you can enjoy life, not avoid problems.
Ooh. Oh, I like that. Okay, so let's talk about that for a moment. So it really is not only are there things, because when you talk about unshakable, I kind of think about that in some of the internal foundational characteristics, which I'm sure there are, and I'm actually want to ask you about those too. But since you brought it up, I love that idea of it's not about going through life avoiding problems, because that really cuts you off as far as your ability to try new things or to do the things that you want to do, but rather to have the confidence that you can face whatever is present.
Yeah, because it's an internal resource. And the big deal here, part of being unshakable is you're connected to your own unshakable center. You're not connected to, not necessarily not connected, but you're not anchored and moored to things outside of yourself. You're more like, okay, well, what do I want here? It's a different way of putting yourself ruthlessly and relentlessly first. And you can do that and still show up and be there for other people, still be in deep connection, still have love, still help, but not be at the whims of something else.
Yeah, because if something else tends to change.
Exactly. And it's all about where is your identity anchored? Because if you're anchored outside of yourself, oh, well, like part of my whole burnout slash breakdown issue was I am a pharmacist instead of, oh, I'm someone who that's what I do for a job. And
Yeah.
it was anchored outside of myself, which created problems.
Yeah, so there's elements, I would imagine, of being a pharmacist that you could claim
Mhm,
as part of that center, right? That core caring for people, enjoying the science of things, right? The
mhm.
interactions, looking at puzzles, all of that piece of it. But it isn't about being a pharmacist, which can come and go, right?
Exactly.
Whatever role, wherever you were, right?
Yeah. And it's kind of like when people have relationship issues, is it that you want to be in a healthy, robust, really wonderful relationship? Or are you attached to it being with a particular person? Because that's an attachment outside yourself, which brings lots of stress, lots of drama, lots of, but what if they, instead of, no, I am in a loving, deeply caring relationship, and this is my chosen person. This is the one I really enjoy. And what's really important is like the thing that's centered back on yourself, the the quality of it.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, so if you were to describe what an unshakable person, uh, a couple of the tenets of being an unshakable being, you're already talking about that piece of it, right? Having that core.
Mhm.
But what else would you add to the equation?
Um, Things that are an outgrowth of being unshakable is certainly calm. It's certainly, and it's really this ability to, once you're connected to your own center, that calms and settles things around you. So it's a stress killer. So there's that, and you're really showing up in your power. I know that it feels trite, but if you've ever truly been fully present and just really settled into your own power and your own personal sovereignty, it's so calming. But other parts are like you're connected to your own empathy. It's a knowledge that everything's happening for you, even if it sucks. like,
Oh,
like,
ooh,
I know
mm,
I like to throw it out there because it's very triggering. But if you play with that idea, what if that's true?
right,
You know,
exactly. As opposed to there's somebody out there to get me. or this situation is happening to cut me down. This situation is here because I'm just that kind of person, right?
Right.
I don't deserve whatever, blah blah blah, right? As yeah,
And it's not wrong to think those things. And
right.
if you truly believe that, that's not wrong. And if you truly believe that and live into that, it's very difficult to be unshakable. Whereas, well, this situation is happening, and then you go through the whole, oh, something's out to get me. This is really, this is awful. And then, okay, well, what if this is happening for me? Okay, this is an opportunity to accept this about myself. This is an opportunity to release something. This is an opportunity to clear the decks for something even better. And even if you don't necessarily believe any of that right off the bat, the ability to question that is part of what gets you to be unshakable. When there's something you can't question, now you've discovered what has power over you and what's controlling you.
Beautiful. So really understanding, hey, I get to take a look at this experience and ask questions. I get to
Mhm.
take a look at this experience and say, what's my role here? Why might this be happening? As opposed to, again, feeling that sense that somebody has that an external force has a power over you that you have no right to shift and change. And again, if you're there, that's good or fine. But it just is, it's going to be something that's going to toss you around a bit.
Absolutely. And then you got to question, well, if something does truly have power over me, why did I give it power over me? Like, what's my benefit from that? Like, why am I not? It's like I was giving a presentation, someone was sharing an issue, and she's like, but my boss has power over me. It's like, they have authority over you in your position. You don't necessarily need to give them power over you. You don't have to show up to work. Oh, but the bills, like, no, I get all of that. But it's
Right.
a choice to show up and it's a choice not to show up and simply own that. Like
Yeah.
it's not right or wrong.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. Being
Yeah.
able to see where we have choices when we've created a story that
Hmm.
says that we don't have choices.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. So I knew this was going to be meaty. All right. So, well, we have to take a break. We have to take a quick break. You're listening to Soul Wisdom Abundance on Transformation Talk Radio. And when I come back with my guest, Heather Clark, we'll talk more about the idea of being unshakable. So stay tuned. Well, we're back on Soul Wisdom Abundance with me, Jennifer Bloome, your host, and my guest, Dr. Heather Clark. We're talking about being unshakable and all the different pieces that go into it and all the different questions you get to ask yourself to help you move into this place of being unshakable. And I have a question for you, but before I ask that question, I have another question, which is I'd love for the people who are listening in to know how to know more about you and know more about your work. So, what's a great way for somebody to get a hold of you or learn more about you?
Oh, thank you so much. My main website is at vibrantagain.com. You can find me there. And I've also got a new podcast launching called Unshakable Being. I know it's going to be
I know,
really
it's so
fun.
exciting.
It's like, it's the perfect thing for a curious introvert to do. But that's where we're really exploring how to be unshakable from all these different angles. And that's available at unshakablebeing.com, as well as on all the podcatchers.
Super. Okay. And I'm going to recommend everybody listen in. Heather is a fantastic interviewer. She has a way of asking all kinds of questions you just never even thought of, but we're like, that's fantastic. I'm so glad we're talking about it. All right. So you said something earlier in our conversation about um, our core, right? And being connected at our core and really connecting internally as opposed to externally. Would you call that core part of that we're tapping into? Would you call that soul?
I would call that's such a good question. It's lots of different things. I think soul is an expression of that. Um, I just have a personal metaphysics about this. So for me, the soul is kind of the structure and framework, and then it's inspirited. That's when you're bringing in your life force energy. And then through living your life, you develop an identity as well. And that can all work together. And when they're all very closely matched, you get lots of energy into your life. And that really creates the unshakable center. Now, the experience of that is different for everybody.
Sure.
There's no, okay, and here is your 3-step process for getting to your unshakable center. It's like,
Well, that
they
was
would
my
be
next
very big
question.
steps.
That was my next question. Darn.
But there are practices.
Yeah. 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 Okay. And I want to get to those in
Mhm.
maybe in our next segment, but I want to ask you this. Can you give us just maybe a thumbnail sketch of what it looks like to be unshakable? You talked about relationship
Mhm.
earlier, but like in career or relationship or finances, some of the big ones, right? What does that look like to be unshakable?
What's it look like is people who are unshakable typically have a reservoir of energy and they have a knowledge they can just channel energy whenever they need it. Do we get tired? Of course we do. But if you've got that fatigue, that mental, emotional, physical, spiritual fatigue, you're like, all right, something's off somewhere.
Yeah.
But certainly good health. The relationships are much better. And in fact, it's easier to build good relationships because you're not building on who you want people to think you are, because you're building on just who you actually are. It's a lot less work.
Yeah, I know. It is. It's so true. So
And
true.
it's easier to show up, certainly in business, but definitely in your career as well. Because when you're working for someone, society tells us, oh, well, you need to do everything they want you to do. And like, no, you are still a sovereign person. You're still showing up. And if there's something that's unethical, you don't have to do it. You can simply say, no, I choose not to. Oh, well, I'll lose my job. Well, now you get to question, why is this job that's asking you to do something unethical so important to you? It's not wrong. Like, okay, well, I'm afraid that I'm not going to have support. Okay, now you're really getting somewhere. How else could you get support? What is it about that? What's the underlying fear? And it's really that willingness to stay with the question and follow wherever it takes you. That's what makes you unshakable. Because then you're not, okay, well, I have to do this in order to get, versus
Right.
my desire is X. So I will make choices that bring me closer to that. And from the outside, that might look the same. Everybody's like, I don't know, it looks like your life is the same, but you seem so much happier, so much calmer. You're doing so much better at work. Your business is making so much more money. What's the secret? Well, the secret is I decided to unhook from everything outside of me and really discover what it is about me with deep love and deep empathy.
Yeah. So, as you say that, the picture I get is you're floating downstream instead of trying to push up through the whitewater, right? You're not fighting through all of that on a consistent basis. You might run into some patches that are rocky or that have some rapids as you're still continuing to go down the river, but you're not fighting against something. And I don't even think that we realize sometimes that we're fighting against something, right?
Right.
I,
Because it's normal, it's natural. It's kind
yeah,
of
it's
like struggle is a currency, just like stress is a currency. Hey, Jennifer,
yeah,
how you doing today? Oh my God, I'm so stressed.
yeah.
Like that's normal. So yeah, it's just a shift out of it.
Hmm.
And if you discover that what you really wanted is upstream and you wanted to go through the whitewater, this is a way to stay centered and simply lean, which takes you into different current, which will then take you right back to your true desire. It just might take, it's just a different path, but it's the path without struggle.
Hmm. So what I'm hearing from you is there is no wrong answer here.
No, why would there be?
Well, why?
Like, well, and because if there's no wrong answer, there's also no right answer. And perfectionists among us, just take a breath. It's okay.
Right.
Like there is maybe a correct answer, meaning an aligned answer, an answer that works for you. But if you're assigning a value judgment, that's a game that is outside of yourself. Because who decides what's right or wrong?
Hmm.
And hopefully you're like your brain explodes at this point and now that's opened up something, because like what's the advantage to making it wrong?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. There is none. There. Right.
Yeah,
Well, other than to just fit in.
exactly.
If your group says right, wrong, Well, okay, then the advantage to me is I think that I get to be part of that group still. But why
You
do I want to be part of that group if
Mhm.
it's rubbing me the wrong way all the time?
Exactly. You're not required to be part of that group, and you're not required to not be, but just be aware of the choices you're making. And is it really working for you? And this is not well, I can just throw ethics out the window. This is about, well, what are my personal values? What are my personal ethics? What works for me? So there's a lot of things that people do that aren't unethical. They're not wrong. I'm not going to do it though. That doesn't work for me because it gets my values. So I'm not going to play. But that's not wrong. And I don't need to make them wrong either. And
Yeah. Beautiful. So you mentioned Gene Keys earlier.
mhm,
Um, I think that my personal journey has shown me that the more that I know about who I really am, the easier it is to connect in with it.
yes.
Yeah. So what are
Yes.
some of your, I mean, that's sort of a truism, yes,
For me,
but
yes.
yeah, so what are some of your favorite paradigms that help you understand what that core really is and what that core loves versus what might be programming or old stories?
What I like, it's one of my favorite modalities that I use. It's an Akashic record approach. So I've got the soul map, which gives you lots of different ways to relate to who you really are. So from the soul map perspective, I'm all about divine order. I am a natural born improver. Like,
Not a
you know,
surprise.
give me something I can make it just a little faster, just a little better, just a little. I might not be able to dream it up in the first place. So from that perspective, that helps me like relate to, okay, well, what's aligned for me? Soul languages is a modality I know that you use. I love them. I'm not a practitioner, but I'm a recipient. I've had a life print reading done, like a handprint reading,
Yep.
which was
Yep.
unbelievably helpful.
That was actually my start into all of this
Yeah.
was having a hand reading, and it blew me away.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I know, right? It's like, and I am still wrapping my head around, like from that perspective, I'm a master of success. I am a healer of healers, and there's all these other really big things to live into.
Hmm.
So for me personally, that's very helpful because it gives an external structure and framework to see what's really going on from the inside. The way I'm wired, I don't necessarily cognitively understand, okay, well, this is who I really am. It's more of like a visceral, intuitive understanding. So I can tell now that I've paid a lot of attention to it. I've got some language around it. I know, oh, okay, well, I'm starting to get exhausted here. I'm doing something that's not aligned for me.
Yeah.
Or this isn't working. I like something's out of character. Oh, I see what I've done here. And then now I've got, with that structure, now I've got tools for, all right, back on track, back into the flow of the river, no more paddling upstream.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I think that the those paradigms are external,
Mhm.
but they really give us ways to start to ask questions in ways that we just wouldn't have. I know hand reading was really important to me. I'm a master healer and mentor in the spotlight, I think, is what my doodly wops is, and that blew me away. I thought I was here to just, and this is terrible wording, to just sort of teach,
Mhm.
right? But when I was able to claim that healer part, whatever that really means, that was huge, and I got to ask some new questions and show up in new
Right.
ways, right? So those external modalities really give you the language to start to say, oh, I am unique and I have unique wants and desires, and it's
Mhm.
okay that I have unique wants and
Right.
desires.
And I think when I say connect to your unshakable center, I'm not saying and then just discard everything external. Because when you think about it, as I play with this idea of sovereignty, so let's pretend, all right, well, I'm certainly sovereign over my own life, but let's use, like we've seen in entertainments and movies and whatever, there's a king or queen or an empress or but they've got advisors. They've
Right.
got advisors, and you kind of you listen, you take all the information in and you discern, oh, this works for me. This doesn't work for me, at least in this moment. And it's that discernment piece that when you're connected to yourself, oh, I can now move forward. Like everything's a lot easier.
Super, super. So, okay, so let's pause there. I want to pause on this idea that we're not all like lone ships out on our own
Hmm,
individual oceans, right? We are interconnected beings, and we get to be interconnected. So
yes.
let's pause there. We're gonna have to take a quick break. I'm Jennifer Bloome, and you're listening to Soul Wisdom Abundance. And when Dr. Clark and I come back, let's talk about a few tips and techniques for people getting into that place of unshakability. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Soul Wisdom Abundance with me, Jennifer Bloome, your host, and my guest, Dr. Heather Clark. So, we've been talking about being unshakable. Let's have you, if you wouldn't mind, give us a few tips, techniques, strategies, things that, I mean, you've already been doing that, right? You've been sharing questions, lots of different questions that we can ask ourselves. And I'm starting to get the sense that that's where that's the direction of your superpower. But what can if somebody who's realizing, okay, yeah, I've kind of identified that I've got this core, and I'm ready to be a little bit more unshakable. What would you say to them? How do they start?
The first thing is breathe, because when
Yeah.
you breathe deeply, that either shuts off or turns down your stress response system. And there's a million right ways to do it, but basically inhale, hold for a little bit, bigger exhale. I like to do like a 6-4-8. So inhale for 6, hold for 4, exhale for 8. And the reason is because it gives your thinky mind something to hang on to
Yeah.
as you breathe. And breathe before responding. Otherwise, it's much more likely you'll be reacting. So I've been, trained as a pharmacist, worked in hospitals, been involved in code situations where someone is actively dying. This is an emergency. And the physician who's running the code breathes for a moment, exhales, and then responds to a question.
Mm,
There is always time to breathe and respond. Almost never is a
yeah.
response required in an instant. So take the time that you require. Once you've done that, ask yourself, because usually it isn't some emergency code situation that it's about a different person. So ask yourself, what do I want here? What's my desire? That is a way to begin to put yourself ruthlessly and relentlessly first. You may not act on that desire. So I remember when the burnout was getting really bad, you pull up to your job, you sit in the parking lot, and you've got here there with your hands on the steering wheel. Okay, you can do this. You can go in. You can
Yeah.
do this. You know,
Yeah.
it
Yep.
really trying to psych yourself up. But then that question, well, if I was truly putting myself first, what would I do here? And for me, a lot of the times I would drive away. I would just drive back home. And then, okay, well, I'm not going to choose that today. It's a choice I can make. I'm not going to choose it today. Okay. And that alone turns the stress down and really begins to pull those hooks out from the external and put yourself back at your unshakable center, even in what for me was a very stressful situation. Be willing to question.
Yeah.
And again, if you discover, oh, it's not safe to question this here, well, now you've found where the problem is. And it may not
Yes.
be what you think it is. Like there are some people, well, I can't really face my money situation because of, and then reasons. Like, well, okay, it might be the reasons, but it could be an underlying fear about what if I can't do it? It could be an underlying concern about something else. But if you can follow that path, you'll discover, okay, well, this is what the issue is. And then you may or may not act on it.
Exactly. It's amazing the number of people who I work with who, when asking those questions financially, discover what they're really afraid of is being seen and
Yeah.
being visible and being heard for who they are. It's a lot easier to put your resistance around money than it is to go, wow, I'm really safe showing up in my uniqueness and in my own language and sharing with the world everything that I think, right?
Exactly, because your brain tells you that's fine to be seen. Like your life is not at risk for posting on social media. And your body tells you, no,
No.
no, like for real, we're going to die here.
Exactly.
So,
So true. Yeah. Yeah.
and so that points to, oh, okay, well, I have some trauma to work through.
Mhm.
I have some whatever to work through. It's not right or wrong. And there's lots of different approaches. But if you're unwilling to even entertain that, now it's external to yourself. You're looking good. You'll have the trappings of success, and then drive home in tears, like, where did this all go wrong?
Yeah. 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 Okay. So we're breathing
Yep.
and we're asking questions,
Breathing, asking questions, using discernment
using
all the
discernment,
time.
and really asking what is it that I want,
Yeah.
right?
What is it that I want? What's my
S-
true desire?
So, what do you say to people who say that's selfish?
I say that that is an interesting point of view.
Hmm.
And I invite you to explore why that's selfish.
Yeah.
Is it because a lot of times it's a deep fear, and it's a conditioning that, and certainly there are some people who are selfish and narcissists and whatever, but they are not listening to programs like
No, they're not.
this.
No, no. If you're listening to us and you're really fascinated and interested, we're not talking
This
about you.
isn't you. Like, okay, well, what if it is selfish?
Yeah.
What if you getting what you want is completely selfish? And what's wrong with
What
that?
is right?
What's wrong with that? And why is it, because selfish has this vibe of bad and wrong. Why is it bad and wrong for you to get what you want? And then you get to really explore, well, who does that inconvenience? Was that something in my upbringing? Like for me to get what I want, that was an inconvenience for somebody? Or why do you think it's dangerous? Like really explore it, not from and this is the right answer, but
Exactly.
from a place of, okay, well, what if that is true?
Hmm.
And then if you find yourself shutting down, that can't be true, sit with it. Sit with discomfort, sit on the fence for at least a few minutes until you can really start to explore it. It helps you shift through. And typically, people have nothing short of epiphanies when they do this, and it changes their whole life.
Yeah. So, do you have recommendations for how to go about doing the questioning process? I would imagine that some people do the questioning process just in their heads,
Mhm.
versus maybe some people might do questioning process in writing, doing a little bit of journaling. Do answers typically come quickly, or are these things that maybe evolve? What's been your experience?
Occasionally, people can do this. Oh, they've learned about it and then they do it on the fly in their heads, and like total transformation in just a moment. Now that is possible, but that's not the way it works for most of us. Um, it's real helpful when you first get started to use something that might feel external to you so that you can be fully witnessed. Now, whether that's a journal and you're writing down the questions, and let me just add how the power is in the question. If you don't get an answer, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's almost a cause for celebration. There's no answer here. Great. Sit with it longer, which is not what people want to hear. But journaling
No.
can be very helpful. If you've got someone in your life that can truly hold space and truly witness, that's a gift. Most people need to hire that out. Find a coach, find someone who can
Yeah.
sit and truly witness what you're doing. Um, and that's different than just sitting quietly while you're talking. It's a true witnessing, because when you do that, that's a big feature of being a healer, Jennifer. I know you know that. But when
Well,
you
right, but
truly witness someone, it shifts everything.
it does, and I think that, I think there's a lot of times people are asking, people have resources. I don't want to say limited resource, but we have a resource bucket, and
Mhm.
do I want to use part of that resource bucket to hire somebody? And what's the point when I can just sort of do all this on my own? And I think there's times when you can do it on your own, and then there are times where being witnessed, being asked the perfect question, and again, I don't mean that from a perfectionism standpoint, but just
No,
somebody
but for
who's
mine.
tuned in, connected, and just has that right question that makes you go, "Oh." And again, then things literally start to change
Mhm.
around you. That's
Changes
a
your
re
whole life.
it does. I mean, that's the power of a really amazing coach, the healer, whatever role,
Yeah.
they've claimed.
And it's especially important as you're developing your discernment, because most of us have a certain type of discernment, but there's I call it right foot, left foot. Use your intuitive discernment and then your rational discernment. Most people have it backwards.
Mm,
But you also, like, what are you hooked into? What are you actually discerning from? And it can take a lot of time. It can happen very quickly, but it can certainly take some effort to break through the conditioning, because something will feel right even though it isn't right. So it's not a true discernment. That's just your conditioning responding.
yeah, right. And being able to learn what are the tells, right? Like
Exactly.
when is it a tell that says, "Ooh, there's a little conditioning here," or when it's something else.
Yes, exactly. And then being willing to sit with, okay, well, as I'm tuned in to my higher self and all the wonderful things, divine intelligence that we tune into, whatever you want to call it, a lot of times those answers are very different
Yeah.
than, because I don't know about you, but I've gotten answers like, that don't seem true. I'm going to sit with that. And then, okay, well, if that is true, then, oh, it all makes sense now. Okay, that was some conditioning that I've been fighting around and didn't realize.
Hmm.
And that it's a form of shadow work, and that can be done on your own. And it is a lot easier if you can
Yeah.
do it with someone to hold the space and really be there with you and help you tune into what works for you, not telling you, oh, well, X, Y, and Z. Like that, no, help me find X, Y, and Z for myself. And
Yes.
now that's all those tools are portable. Now you're well on your way to being unshakable.
Super. Wow, you have had so much to share today. I'm so grateful that you've been here. So we've got about a minute left. What haven't I asked you that you really would like somebody to hear about being unshakable?
First of all, you're more than you could ever know. You're whole and complete exactly as you are. The more you're able to take that on, the more unshakable you are. All of your problems are worldview issues. I know, stay with me. That's very triggering, but it's a
Ooh,
worldview issue. It's not necessarily your circumstances. Play with that as if that's true. You'll get a lot of freedom around it and really become unshakable. And the more you can be in the world, the more life you bring in to everything. The more vitality you've got, the better health, the more money. It's like life, body, business, and bank account. It's so beautiful.
well, and we're going to let that be the last word. Thank you, Heather, so much. I'm honored that you are here to share your wisdom and you speak the truth. What more can I say? So I would encourage everyone to take a look at Heather's Vibrant Again website, see the kind of work she's putting out there, listen to her brand new podcast. You'll have a lot to learn there. So again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's been an absolute delight.
Fantastic. All right. So we got to go to break. I'm Jennifer Bloome on Soul Wisdom Abundance. When we come back, I'm going to talk about some of the things that Heather has shared, and we're going to talk specifically about being unshakable, to use her word, in the money realm. So stay tuned. So welcome back to Soul Wisdom Abundance with me, your host Jennifer Bloome. What a delight it was to talk with Heather Clark, and I want to take what she was talking about, what the two of us were talking about through the first part of the episode, and apply it directly to being in a situation where maybe you're feeling a little bit shaken around money, and what is it that you can do so that you are unshakable? Because part of being in that, if you're if you're in a situation where you're feeling shaken, it doesn't feel good. Right, number one, it just doesn't feel good. And what's really important, when we're looking specifically at money, is the resource of money, that energy of money that we're pulling from the divine, is centered in our feeling state. So we're controlling it, so to speak, through our feeling state. So it is imperative that we learn how to become unshakable, again, to borrow Dr. Clark's term, in the realm of money. And so let's talk a little bit about how you go about doing that. And part of these are going to sound like truisms, and then we'll talk about the reality, right? We'll talk about what you can really do. So the first step for me really is being solid in the laws of the universe. Get really familiar with the laws. We talk about law of attraction. We talk about problem and solution. We talk about a lot of those things, uh, and sometimes they're more like intellectual concepts, right? And so you want them to be knowledge, just like you have knowledge of the law of gravity. Right? We don't think about gravity, so you want to get really solid there. And part of that then is allowing yourself to build trust in the universe, the trust that you get to have that divine support, trust that you get access to the financial flow that comes from the universe. Okay. So as you're getting comfortable in those laws and comfortable in that trust, you want to start using language that reflects that. Right? How many times have you walked around saying, I want this, but I can't afford it. I want this, but I can't have it. Well, as we use that language, that's what we're putting out into the field. Right? So we want to use language that's really going to help us be and use those laws in a very tangible way. So let me give you, speaking of tangible, let me give you a tangible example. All right. So I've started thinking about money and resources as different levels. So as opposed to thinking about having a certain amount of money in the bank account, I'm starting to categorize different levels of financial flow. So at the very bottom of the financial flow, you're in a situation where you're just surviving. Right, you're just getting those bills paid. Maybe you're having to float from month to month. You're having sort of to rob Peter to pay Paul, but you're doing it. You're surviving. The next level up is maintaining. So, okay, now things are getting paid. I'm not worrying about things so much, but really all I'm doing is being at that same level from day to day. Next level up is flourishing. So now I've got my bills paid and I'm able to do all of these extra things. I've got more experiences in my life. I'm having a little bit more I'm really experiencing the joy that this resource of money can bring. And then the top level, I'm calling sumptuous, right? Somebody who's just got, you can even think about it as extravagant, although extravagant has kind of a connotation that isn't as good as a sumptuous, kind of lavish lifestyle where you really have everything that you want. Okay. So if we are going to move from level to level, we must use language that supports being in that next level before anything happens. We need to be in that feeling state before we're actually there. All right. So as you can do that, now you're working with the laws. So how do you do that? Right? How do you experience something before you've ever experienced it? How do you feel it before you ever experienced it? And this is where that tool of visualization comes in. It comes in very handy. So let's try this. All right. So go ahead and close your eyes, please. And let's imagine that you are wanting to move from this level of kind of maintaining things, life's okay, money in, money out, money in, money out. Sometimes there's more out than in, but you manage. But you're really ready to move into that more flourishing area where it's money in, money in, money out, money in, money in, money out. Right? You do so many more experiences. So imagine for a moment what it would feel like to have that experience of doing whatever you want. Imagine what's the first thing that you would choose? For me, one of the signs of being in that flourishing area was to have flowers around the house. right? I have a vase full of flowers everywhere. I love, as I said, I'm a nature girl, and bringing the outdoors in was really important. So that, and that's not something that I could do if I was in a survival or sort of that maintaining area. So that would have been an extravagance. So pick something that would be a signal to you that you're in this place where you are able to make these better, to make choices that give you more joy and more freedom with your money, and feel it in your body as if it were real. Okay. All right. So then go ahead and open your eyes and just notice what that feeling state is, right? That's what you want to practice. And then as you are living the day to day life before that happens, right? If something comes up and it starts to look like the exact opposite of what you've been visualizing, you get to say things like, hey, whatever's here is based on my past feelings, my past thoughts. And that's okay, right? That, like what Dr. Clark was talking about, as far as there's nothing wrong, right? There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's not wrong to be where you are financially. It's not right to be someplace specific. But if you can say, this is I am where I am because of previous thoughts and previous feeling states, that's okay, but I'm ready for something new. And that's when you get to step into and remember that feeling state from your body of what is in that next level. So it is about, uh, Heather used the word relentless several times, and I'm going to borrow it because I think there are times we want to do something once and let that be enough because, frankly, we're tired of where we've been and we just want something to be better. But you really need to, when you're thinking about switching into a new way of living, you need to be relentless about how you're thinking and you're feeling. We get to be kind to ourselves. We don't have to beat ourselves up if we slip into an old pattern, but then we get to recognize it and say, wait a minute, this is feeling like those past feelings, those past thoughts that got me where I am. And that's okay. Cause that's what, right. That's how it happened. That's how it unfolded. And I'm ready for something new. And then you get to reach for that new feeling. And won't it be fun when? I'm looking forward to when, right? So there are lots of other tools and techniques that can help create shifts between these different levels of living. There are lots of tools and techniques that can support the sense of being unshakable. And if you would like more support, I'm going to invite you to take a look at the tools and resources that I've got listed on my website, jenniferbloome.com. I'm also going to encourage you to come over to Facebook. If you're somebody that likes to play in Facebook world, you can find me at Soul Abundance Guide. And I have a page there that has a lot of different information. All right. So I'm going to let that be the last word today. Thank you all for tuning in and being a part of this conversation on soul wisdom abundance. It was a delight for me to share Dr. Clark's information, and I invite you to seek her out. And please join me every first and third Friday at 9 Pacific, 11 Central. We will have another guest next week or next time, talking more in depth about your relationship with money. So have a great couple of weeks, and I'll see you back here next time. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.